1929. The system breaks for the first time on a global scale. Markets collapse. Paper wealth turns into literal paper. People sit on the streets, surrounded by flying documents, realizing that stability was never guaranteed. 1931. The crisis crosses borders. Austria. Rain. Long lines under umbrellas. Fear looks the same in every language. 1933. Banks close across the United States. People wait, not only for money, but for direction. A voice comes through the radio. When systems fail, authority becomes currency. Silence fills the space between words. Uncertainty spreads faster than information. People listen carefully, not to understand the details, but to feel that someone is in control. In moments like this, confidence matters more than explanation. 1944. After years of collapse and war, the world looks for stability. Not in the streets, not in public debate, but in controlled rooms, behind closed doors, away from public pressure, far from the consequences felt outside. Representatives gather quietly. Decisions are made without crowds, without applause. A new financial order is negotiated. Currencies are fixed. Exchange rates are locked. Rules replace improvisation. Uncertainty is treated as a threat. Flexibility as a risk. The dollar becomes the reference point. Gold becomes the anchor. For the first time, global finance is deliberately restrained. Limits are introduced. Boundaries are defined. Movement is controlled. Stability is no longer accidental. It is engineered. This system promises predictability, discipline, continuity, a framework designed to prevent panic, to contain fear, to slow collapse. For decades, the structure holds. It absorbs shocks. It manages growth. It creates the illusion of permanence. But control comes with a cost. Rigidity replaces adaptation. Pressure builds beneath the surface. The system accumulates tension. And tension does not disappear. It waits. (1971). The structure begins to shift, quietly, without ceremony, without public debate. The anchor is removed. Gold no longer defines value. Limits no longer apply. Money detaches from weight, from substance, from restraint. What remains is belief. Confidence replaces guarantees. Expectation replaces backing. Creation accelerates. Correction lags behind. Flexibility becomes policy. Speed becomes advantage. From this moment on, money expands faster than reality. Markets grow taller. Leverage grows deeper. Stability is no longer enforced. It is assumed. Growth feels permanent. Risk feels distant. But distance is an illusion. Without anchors, pressure accumulates silently. And systems without limits always discover them late. 1973. The shock arrives through energy. Oil becomes leverage. Supply tightens. Prices surge. Lines form at gas stations. Engines idle. Time stretches. Economic theory turns physical. Fuel is counted. Movement is rationed. Inflation accelerates. Growth slows. For the first time, modern economies confront a hard limit. Energy exposes dependency. Dependency exposes vulnerability. The system continues to function, but no longer smoothly. Scarcity replaces abundance, and confidence begins to erode. 1979. The crisis returns through geopolitics. Production is disrupted. Supply contracts again. Energy prices surge a second time. Streets fill with protests. Smoke rises. Uncertainty spreads. Political instability transforms into economic pressure. Inflation accelerates further. Interest rates rise sharply. Growth stalls. What was once temporary reveals itself as structural. The global economy adjusts not by choice, but by force. Confidence weakens. Planning becomes impossible. Energy is no longer just a resource. It becomes a weapon. And vulnerability becomes visible. 1980. The response turns aggressive. Interest rates rise sharply. Credit tightens. Money becomes expensive. Inflation is confronted directly. Growth is deliberately sacrificed. Businesses slow. Unemployment rises. Debt grows heavier. The cost of stability becomes visible. For many economies, adjustment slides into recession. What was borrowed cheaply must now be repaid under pressure. The system survives, but only through enforced discipline. Expansion ends. Pain replaces growth. And the cycle continues. 1987. Markets break without warning. Prices collapse in hours. Algorithms accelerate panic. Human reaction lags behind. Traders shout. Orders fail. Screens bleed red. Confidence evaporates faster than capital. The crash exposes a new reality. Speed has outgrown control. Systems survive, but belief is damaged. The lesson is clear. Markets can fall faster than anyone can respond. 1990. The crisis shifts into the financial system itself. Savings institutions begin to fail. Not suddenly, but steadily. Quietly. Promises made to ordinary depositors prove weaker than expected. Banks close their doors. Chains appear on entrances. Signs replace explanations. For years, risk was hidden behind regulation. Losses were delayed, not resolved. When the structure finally gives way, the damage is widespread. Elderly couples sit on steps waiting for answers that do not arrive. Confidence erodes slowly. Trust does not collapse, it drains. Government intervention follows. Rescue plans are announced. Insurance is invoked. The system is stabilized, but credibility suffers. What was meant to protect savings reveals its own fragility. The lesson is not dramatic, but persistent. Even regulated systems fail when incentives are misaligned. And the cost is always paid later. (1994). Confidence breaks suddenly. The currency collapses overnight. Exchange rates double. Prices lose meaning. Crowds rush to currency booths. Security struggles to hold order. What was stable yesterday is unreachable today. Capital exits faster than policy reacts. Emergency measures follow. Loans arrive with conditions. Trust does not. The crisis reveals how quickly global money can retreat. Volatility becomes contagious, and fear replaces calculation. 1997. The crisis spreads through interconnected markets. It begins in one region but does not remain there. Currencies fall rapidly. Capital flees without hesitation. Liquidity disappears. Thailand breaks first. Others follow. Banks weaken. Corporations collapse. Employment contracts. What looked like growth is revealed as leverage. Governments respond with controls. Institutions respond with conditions. Confidence fractures across borders. In some cities, anger replaces fear. Shops burn. Streets fill. Elsewhere, collapse is quieter. Offices empty. Workers carry boxes into the daylight. The crisis exposes a new reality. Globalization accelerates prosperity, but also synchronizes failure. Markets are no longer isolated. Neither are consequences. Recovery begins unevenly. Damage remains uneven longer. The lesson becomes unavoidable. When capital moves freely, crisis does too, and containment becomes impossible. 1998. The crisis leaves the balance sheets and enters the streets. Crowds gather in the rain, not for ideology, but for survival. Anger replaces confusion. Fear turns collective. Riot police form lines. Shields lock together. Tension thickens the air. Inside buildings, decisions are discussed calmly. Outside, people shout through megaphones, trying to be heard by systems that no longer listen. Flags rise above the crowd, not as symbols of unity, but as signals of resistance. Trust in institutions erodes visibly. Every hour, every confrontation. The distance between policy and reality becomes impossible to ignore. Banks hesitate. Governments delay. Markets react faster than statements. Capital moves silently while people move together. Some shout demands. Others simply stand, soaked, exhausted, waiting. Violence erupts at the edges. Cars burn. Glass breaks. Order responds with force. Force deepens resentment. The crisis reveals its final form. It is no longer abstract, no longer technical. It has faces, voices, crowds. What began as numbers ends as pressure, and pressure always seeks release. 1999. The collapse becomes official. Exchange boards go blank. Rates disappear. Windows are covered with paper. People press closer to the glass, hoping for numbers that will not return. Phones are raised. Voices overlap. Answers do not come. Savings lose shape overnight. In courtyards, elderly hands count worn banknotes, carefully, slowly. Not calculating profit, but survival. A bag lies open, almost empty. Newspapers announce what everyone already feels. The currency has fallen. Inside banks, lines stretch deep into the building. Movement is minimal. Waiting is absolute. A sign replaces service. Cash withdrawals are temporarily suspended. A guard stands still. Paper forms are torn in half. Trust breaks quietly. In apartments, families gather around old televisions. The word appears on the screen: default. No explanation follows. The room remains silent. For some, this moment rewrites the future. For others, it erases the past. Promises dissolve into procedure. Stability collapses into routine. The crisis is no longer abstract. It lives in queues, in kitchens, in pockets. What was saved is no longer protected. What was believed is no longer reliable. The system resets, not cleanly, not fairly, but completely. 1999. The crisis returns to the core of the system. This time it wears a suit. Trading floors fall silent, screens flash red, charts collapse faster than explanations. Highly leveraged strategies begin to fail, models break, correlations vanish. Phones ring continuously. No one has clear answers. What was designed to manage risk has concentrated it instead. Losses spread through balance sheets. Confidence evaporates between trades. Inside offices, hands grip printed reports. Outside, paper drifts through the air. A familiar name appears on glass and steel: Lehman Brothers. 7:45. Crowds gather below, watching institutions they trusted lose control. The crisis no longer belongs to one fund. It threatens the entire financial network. Emergency meetings are called. Officials sit under harsh lights. Voices are firm. Time is limited. Stability becomes a public responsibility. Intervention replaces ideology. Private risk turns systemic. The system survives, but only through coordination and containment. Markets reopen, but something has changed. Complexity has outpaced oversight. And the belief that math alone can control markets is permanently damaged. 1999. The crisis returns to the core of the system. This time, it wears a suit. Trading floors fall silent. Screens flash red. Charts collapse faster than explanations. Highly leveraged strategies begin to fail. Models break. Correlations vanish. Phones ring continuously. No one has clear answers. What was designed to manage risk has concentrated it instead. Losses spread through balance sheets. Confidence evaporates between trades. Inside offices, hands grip printed reports. Outside, paper drifts through the air. A familiar name appears on glass and steel: Lehman Brothers. 7:45. Crowds gather below, watching institutions they trusted lose control. The crisis no longer belongs to one fund. It threatens the entire financial network. Emergency meetings are called. Officials sit under harsh lights. Voices are firm. Time is limited. Stability becomes a public responsibility. Intervention replaces ideology. Private risk turns systemic. The system survives, but only through coordination and containment. Markets reopen, but something has changed. Complexity has outpaced oversight, and the belief that math alone can control markets is permanently damaged. 2001. The system freezes. Banks lock their doors. Accounts stop responding. Savings become unreachable. People gather in the streets not to demand profit, but to demand access to what they already own. Cash limits are imposed. Withdrawals are rationed. Trust is officially suspended. The word spreads fast. Corralito. Money exists, but cannot move. Middle-class certainty collapses overnight. Retirements vanish. Businesses shut without warning. Pots and pans become instruments of protest. Noise replaces dialogue. Anger replaces patience. Police lines form. Shields rise. Streets turn into pressure valves. Inside homes, families watch leaders on television, promising order, asking for calm, offering timelines without dates. Contracts mean nothing without liquidity. Laws bend under emergency. Stability becomes negotiable. The crisis is no longer abstract. It is personal, immediate, physical. What was once a financial adjustment becomes a social fracture. The lesson is brutal. When confidence disappears, systems do not fail quietly. They fail in public. 2007. The illusion finally breaks. For years, homes were treated like machines. Buy, refinance, extract, repeat. Credit was cheap. Risk was disguised. Complex models promised safety, but beneath the surface, the foundations were hollow. Interest rates rise. Payments adjust. Defaults spread quietly at first. Then suddenly, everywhere. Families lose homes. Bank-owned replaces for sale. Entire neighborhoods fall silent. What was sold as security reveals itself as leverage. On Wall Street, confidence evaporates. Assets no one understands can no longer be priced. Balance sheets collapse under their own weight. Trust between institutions disappears. Liquidity freezes. Fear replaces math. Governments step closer. Emergency meetings multiply. The system is declared too big to fail. Losses are socialized. Pain is privatized. For millions, this is not a financial event, but a personal one. Boxes packed. Cars loaded. Children watching from the back seat. The crisis moves from screens into living rooms. And the cycle proves once again that stability built on debt is only temporary. 2008. The pressure finally breaks. Years of cheap credit, complex promises, and invisible leverage collapse into a single moment. Screens turn red. Phones never stop ringing. Confidence evaporates faster than capital. Banks no longer trust banks. Liquidity disappears. What was once considered safe is suddenly questioned. On Wall Street, numbers fall faster than explanations. Traders freeze. Executives search for exits that no longer exist. Behind the charts, real lives begin to fracture. Homes are marked. Keys are returned. Families pack their history into boxes. What was sold as innovation reveals itself as fragility. Risk, carefully hidden, moves to the surface. Governments intervene. Emergency meetings replace market logic. Public money flows into private failure. Too big to fail becomes too dangerous to ignore. The system survives, but only by rewriting its own rules. Trust is patched, not restored. The lesson is clear but briefly remembered. Because once panic fades, memory fades with it. And the cycle prepares to begin again. 2010. The crisis moves continents. What began as a banking collapse becomes a sovereign one. Debt is no longer hidden inside balance sheets. It stands openly on government ledgers. In Europe, numbers dictate policy. Budgets tighten. Wages freeze. Public services shrink. The word austerity enters everyday language. Streets fill faster than parliaments. Tear gas replaces debate. Police lines answer economic formulas. Flags wave, but not in celebration. They are shields against uncertainty. Citizens are told there is no alternative. That sacrifice is necessary. That discipline will restore confidence. But confidence does not return easily. Unemployment hardens. Youth leave. Entire generations pause their lives. Behind closed doors, leaders negotiate survival. Emergency summits. Rescue mechanisms. Temporary solutions for structural problems. The union holds, but only under strain. Trust between nations weakens. Trust within societies fractures. The crisis is no longer financial alone. It becomes political, social, existential. Stability is defended, but legitimacy erodes. The system survives again, not because it heals, but because it bends. And bending becomes the new normal. The cycle adapts. It does not end. 2013. The crisis reaches ordinary accounts, not banks collapsing, not markets crashing, but deposits frozen. In Cyprus, cash machines go silent. Screens repeat the same message, temporarily unavailable. People wait. Hours turn into days. Savings exist on paper, but not in hands. Banks close their doors. Bank holiday, the sign said. Behind the glass, families watch their money become unreachable. Protests fill the streets. Not against speculation, against confiscation. For the first time in modern Europe, a new rule is introduced. Depositors are no longer protected. They are part of the rescue. A bail-in. Losses are shifted downward. From institutions to citizens, from balance sheets to households, small savers realize the truth. Their money is a liability. Not to them, but to the system. Trust fractures. If deposits can be taxed, then ownership is conditional. Financial safety becomes political. Risk is no longer optional. It is assigned. The message is clear. In a crisis, money in the bank is not fully yours. Stability is preserved. Confidence is not. And the precedent remains, waiting. (2015). Pressure shifts east. Markets fixate on one number. A small move, then another. The yuan adjusts. Calm on paper, loud on screens, charts dip. Confidence follows. China signals control. The world senses uncertainty. Traders hesitate. Currencies realign. Capital searches for exits. This is not a collapse. It is a recalibration, but even careful adjustments have consequences. Trust becomes conditional. Exchange rates turn into instruments. In a connected system, no change stays local. Volatility spreads quietly and globally. Liquidity thins further. Confidence fractures in layers, first quietly, then all at once. Signals multiply. Reactions arrive late. Corrections overshoot. What was framed as control reveals its limits. Markets adapt, but memory remains. Stability proves conditional. And beneath calm surfaces, pressure continues to build, waiting for release. Scene. 2018. 2018. A currency loses altitude fast. Not in theory, on the street. Numbers slide. Prices reprint overnight. Savings evaporate between paychecks. The shock is local, but the signal is global. Confidence breaks before systems do. Markets watch closely. Not because Turkey is unique, but because the pattern is familiar. Political pressure replaces monetary restraint. Rates resist reality. Narratives fight arithmetic. Foreign capital retreats. Debt denominated in dollars grows heavier by the day. Refinancing becomes survival. Citizens queue at exchange counters, not to speculate, but to preserve value. Each conversion is a vote, against promises, against control. Authorities respond with words. Markets respond with exits. Volatility spreads through balance sheets, then through households. What looked like a regional problem reveals a systemic truth. Currencies fail quietly until suddenly they don't. And once trust is questioned, recovery becomes political, not technical. The lesson is recorded, not as a crisis, but as a warning. 2019. Pressure that had been building for years finally breaks the surface. Currencies slip. Prices jump. Trust erodes quietly, then all at once. In supermarkets, numbers change faster than habits. What was affordable last week is suddenly out of reach. Families calculate again, and then again. Cash loses meaning. Cards fail. ATMs go dark. Markets react before governments do. Headlines speak of volatility, but people feel something simpler: loss of control. Central banks intervene. Rates are adjusted. Statements are issued. Stability is promised, but uncertainty spreads faster than reassurance. Savings shrink without being spent. Wages lag behind reality. The gap widens. This is not a single collapse. It is fragmentation. Different regions, same pattern. Different causes, same outcome. Confidence becomes the rarest asset, and once shaken, it does not return easily. The system continues to function. Payments still clear. Trades still settle. But belief is damaged, and without belief, every number becomes fragile. 2021. Stress moves from markets to streets. Banks close early. ATMs empty. Cash becomes inaccessible when it is needed most. Fear turns personal, not theoretical, immediate. Behind counters, clerks raise their hands. Behind glass, money burns. Trust collapses faster than currencies. People demand what is already theirs. Savings trapped, withdrawals frozen, promises suspended. Governments speak of stability. Citizens hear delay. Systems designed for order face panic. Limits are imposed. Controls tighten. Queues grow longer. The crisis is no longer abstract. It has faces, voices, anger. Violence appears where patience ends. Glass breaks. Doors fall. Rules dissolve. Money still exists, but access does not. And when ownership is questioned, the social contract fractures. This is not a crash on screens. It is a breakdown of confidence in institutions. Once that line is crossed, recovery becomes political, not financial, and the damage lingers far beyond numbers. 2022. The shock is external and immediate. Sanctions redraw the map overnight. Trade routes snap. Exports stop at closed gates. Payments fail mid-transaction. Money does not disappear, it fractures. Currencies weaken under pressure. Reserves freeze beyond reach. Cards stop working across borders. Systems once global turn selective. Supply chains stall. Prices jump without warning. What was affordable yesterday becomes uncertain today. Markets fall, then freeze. Capital looks for exits that no longer exist. Risk is redefined by geography. Digital alternatives surge, not out of belief, but necessity. Volatility replaces stability. Governments respond with controls, limits, substitutions, emergency measures layered on old rules. Citizens adapt faster than institutions. Cash returns, barter reappears. Trust narrows to what is local and visible. The financial world splits into zones. Access becomes political. Liquidity becomes conditional. This is not a collapse, it is a separation. A reminder that money is not neutral. It follows power. And when power shifts, the rules change instantly. What was once universal is now permission-based, and uncertainty becomes permanent. 2023. The crisis returns quietly, not with crowds but with notifications. Banks fail in days, not years. Screens update faster than trust can react. Institutions once considered stable close their doors overnight. Temporary becomes indefinite. Isolated becomes systemic. Liquidity vanishes where confidence breaks. Deposits move at the speed of fear. Digital runs replace physical lines. Authorities intervene immediately. Guarantees expand. Rules bend. Emergency becomes policy. Markets stabilize. Technically. Psychology does not. What collapses is not balance sheets alone, but assumptions. That risk was contained, that safeguards were sufficient, that history would not repeat so soon. The lesson is subtle but brutal. Modern finance is fast, fragile, and deeply interconnected. Nothing explodes, nothing burns, but the foundation shifts, and everyone feels it. Crisis. Venezuela. What comes next? After U.S. intervention, the country enters extreme uncertainty. The removal of Maduro breaks the center of power. Scenarios include chaos, elite infighting, military dominance, or rapid elections. Risks are institutional collapse and regional spillover. The outcome depends on the army and loyalty of key actors. Support the channel, subscribe, like, and follow us.